They say sound carries strangely underground. The way air moves through tunnels and chambers can distort voices, turn whispers into wails, and make ordinary noises seem like something they're not. It was this thought, this simple, logical explanation, that I clung to as I crouched at the cave's entrance, staring into the pitch-black abyss. I had never planned to go caving. I wasn't a thrill seeker. Hell, I wasn't even particularly adventurous. But life has a way of pushing you toward things you'd rather avoid. It started with Sam. Sam was my older brother, 6 years older, to be exact. He was everything I wasn't. Confident, daring, always chasing some new rush. He had gotten into caving in college, and over the years, it had become an obsession. His stories were full of descriptions of tight squeezes, massive underground lakes, and miles of tunnels that hadn't been mapped. I never understood it. The idea of willingly crawling into the earth, surrounded by nothing but rock and darkness, made my skin crawl. But Sam loved it. He lived for it. So when he went missing, it didn't come as a complete shock. It had been 6 weeks since anyone had heard from him. He had gone caving alone, which was stupid, but typical for him. He was supposed to check in after a few days. He never did. Search and rescue teams had gone down looking for him, but found nothing. No trace, no gear, no body, just a note in his car. It was scribbled on the back of a gas station receipt, shoved in the glove compartment like an afterthought. Found something. Going deeper. If I don't make it back, don't come looking. The search teams had eventually given up. As far as they were concerned, Sam was dead. Lost to the cave. And that should have been the end of it. But then the humming started. I first heard it 2 weeks ago. Faint, almost imperceptible, late at night when the house was silent. A low, droning hum, like a distant choir, just on the edge of hearing. At first, I thought it was coming from outside. The wind, maybe, or power lines. But when I listened closer, I realized it was coming from beneath me. I tried to ignore it, told myself I was imagining things. Stress does weird shit to the brain, and I hadn't been sleeping well since Sam disappeared. But every night, the humming returned, growing clearer, stronger. And then I started dreaming. In the dreams, I was in a cave. His cave. I knew it instinctively, even though I had never been there before. The walls were rough, glistening with moisture. The air was thick, heavy with an earthy scent that clung to my lungs. And in the distance, past the tunnels, past the yawning void of the unknown, I could hear the humming. It wasn't human. That's what terrified me the most. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced that the sound was still lingering in the air. And maybe it was, because by the time the second week rolled around, I could hear it all the time. It followed me, to work, to the store. It buzzed beneath my skin, a vibration I couldn't shake. No one else seemed to notice. Not my coworkers, not my friends. Just me. It was leading me somewhere. And against every ounce of common sense, I knew where I had to go. I stood at the entrance to the cave, staring into the blackness, my flashlight trembling in my grip. The search teams had combed this place thoroughly. If Sam was down there, he was buried deep. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. They wouldn't have understood. They would have tried to stop me. The humming was louder now. Not just a sound, but a feeling, a pressure in my skull, pushing me forward. I took my first step inside. The temperature dropped instantly. The warm autumn air gave way to a damp, suffocating chill. My boots crunched over loose rock, the sound swallowed by the immense silence pressing down on me. I had studied the cave's layout from the search reports. The main chamber was just ahead. Beyond that, tunnels branched off in multiple directions, some mapped, others unexplored. Sam had gone beyond the mapped sections. I switched on my headlamp. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a vast cavern ahead. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth from the ceiling, their tips glistening with moisture. The floor was uneven, strewn with broken rock. I moved cautiously, scanning the area. This was where the search teams had last seen signs of Sam. A rope leading downward, deeper into the unknown. The rope was still there. That shouldn't have been possible. It had been 6 weeks. If the teams had left it, someone should have come back for it. And yet, there it was, anchored tightly to a rock formation, descending into a narrow crevice. And as I stood there, heart pounding, I realized something that turned my blood to ice. The rope was moving. It wasn't much, just a faint twitch, a slow, almost imperceptible sway. But there was no breeze, no wind, no movement of air. Something down there was pulling it. I gripped the rope. It felt solid, real. My headlamp illuminated the crevice, but the light barely penetrated the depths. The tunnel was narrow, just wide enough for a person squeezed through. The walls were smooth, almost polished. Not natural, not normal. The humming was deafening now. I didn't want to go down. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to leave while I still could. But I had to know, had to see. I secured my harness, double-checked the rope, and took a deep breath. And then I descended. The crevice swallowed me whole. The walls pressed tight against my shoulders, and for a brief, suffocating moment, panic surged through me. I focused on my breathing, one step at a time. Don't think about the weight of the earth above. Don't think about the crushing darkness. The descent took longer than expected. The deeper I went, the more unnatural it felt. The walls weren't just smooth, they were almost carved, like something had shaped them. I finally reached the bottom and unclipped my harness. The tunnel ahead sloped downward, vanishing into the black. My flashlight barely cut through the gloom, and for the first time, I felt something I couldn't explain. The air down here was thick, like stepping into a room that had been sealed for centuries. And the smell, earthy, but with something else beneath it. Something wrong. And then, just ahead, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. A boot print. Fresh. Too fresh. And beside it, another. But it was wrong. The shape was twisted, elongated. Not human. The humming grew louder. It was close now, and I wasn't alone. The moment I saw the footprints, my body locked up. One was unmistakably human, a fresh boot print, pressed into the damp cave floor. The other wasn't. The second print looked like something had tried to mimic a human step, but failed. It was elongated, the arch too high, the toes slightly splayed, as if it didn't quite belong to a foot at all. And there were more of them, scattered across the ground, trailing into the darkness ahead. The air was thick with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels forced, like sound had been drained from the world itself. It pressed down on me, making my head feel light, my breathing too loud. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, scanning the cavern ahead. The passage sloped downward, vanishing into a tunnel carved into the rock. The humming was coming from there. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Sam had come this way, and he wasn't alone. I forced my feet forward, stepping cautiously, making sure not to disturb the prince. Every instinct was screaming at me to turn back, to leave before whatever had made those tracks knew I was here. But I couldn't. Not now. The tunnel narrowed as I moved deeper. The walls were wrong, not jagged like natural cave formations, but eerily smooth, like they had been shaped. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I wasn't walking through something created by nature. I was walking into something built. The thought made my skin crawl. The humming grew louder. It wasn't a sound anymore, it was inside me, vibrating in my bones, pressing against my skull. It had rhythm, a pulsing quality like a voice without words. Then, the tunnel opened into a new chamber, and my breath caught in my throat. At first, I couldn't process what I was looking at. The cavern was massive, far bigger than it had any right to be this deep underground. My flashlight's beam barely reached the edges, but I could see structures, stone pillars, symmetrical, carved, and at the center of the chamber was something impossible. A massive, circular hole. It was perfectly smooth, its edges too precise to be natural. The rock around it had been carved away, leaving a gaping void that descended into pure blackness. And the humming was coming from inside it. The sound wasn't just noise anymore, it was calling me. I took a step closer, shining my light down into the hole. The beam was swallowed by darkness, revealing nothing. And then movement, a shape deep below, something shifting, something looking up at me. My body went rigid. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then I saw it, something rising, a form unfolding from the depths of the hole, emerging from the blackness like a shadow given mass. Its shape was wrong, shifting, stretching, and then it hummed back, a perfect mimic of the sound that had been leading me here. A sound I realized with a sudden burst of terror was no longer coming from the hole. It was coming from behind me. I spun around, and the last thing I saw before the light flickered out was a figure standing at the edge of the cavern. A man, or at least something pretending to be one. The light flickered out. A crushing, inky darkness swallowed me whole. And in that darkness, the humming continued. But now it wasn't distant. It wasn't a vibration in my skull or a whisper in the rock. It was close. Too close. I could feel it, right behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I fumbled for the flashlight, my fingers numb with panic. The cavern felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in, like something was breathing against my skin. Then a click. The light snapped back on, and I saw him. At first glance, he looked like Sam. Same build, same height, same worn-out caving gear, dirt-streaked and ragged. His face was turned slightly away, just out of the light's reach. But something was wrong. His posture was off, too stiff, too rigid. And when he moved, it wasn't natural. It was delayed, like a bad recording buffering mid-motion. I couldn't breathe. My brother was dead. I knew this. I had come down here expecting to find his remains, not him standing in front of me. But then he took another step, and something in the way he moved sent a pulse of raw terror through me. The humming. It was coming from him now. His head tilted, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, in a voice not quite right, he spoke. You heard it too. I wanted to run. I should have run, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind was a fractured mess of denial and terror. This wasn't Sam. It was something else. Something using his face. What happened to you? I finally managed to choke out. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the immense silence of the cavern. The thing pretending to be my brother didn't answer right away. It just watched me. Then slowly it smiled. My stomach turned. It was the kind of smile a child would make when trying to mimic one. Too wide, too forced. The skin around his lips strained, like it wasn't used to moving that way. And then, in a voice that was almost right, but just a little too hollow, he said, "I went deeper." I shuddered. The way he said it, it wasn't a confession. It was an invitation. A rush of cold air swept through the cavern, carrying a scent I couldn't place, earthy but wrong. The light in my hands flickered again. I tightened my grip, heart hammering. "You're not Sam," I whispered. The thing cocked its head, its neck creaking unnaturally. Does it matter? The humming surged, a pulsing wave of sound that wasn't sound at all. It was inside me now, vibrating in my bones. My skin crawled, and then I realized it wasn't just coming from him anymore. It was coming from below, from the hole. I turned my head slowly, my light trailing over the vast pit in the center of the cavern. Something was coming up. I stepped back instinctively, but my boot scraped against the stone, and the sound echoed. Too loud, too sharp. The humming stopped. Silence. Then movement. The figure wearing Sam's face turned its head toward the hole, its posture shifting like it was waiting for something. And from the depths, something answered. A hand, or what I think was a hand, rose from the blackness. Long, unnaturally thin fingers curled over the stone edge. The skin was pale, stretched too tightly over its bones. It didn't look like something that should belong to a person. It twitched, and then another hand grasped the edge, and another, and another. The air crackled with something wrong, something ancient and hungry. Then, the figure wearing my brother's face laughed. A broken, hollow sound that barely resembled a human voice. And he said, "They heard you too. The hands gripping the edge of the pit were too many." At first, I thought I was seeing double. My mind refused to process what was happening. But as the pale, bone-thin fingers twitched and tightened, I knew. This wasn't just one thing. There were many. And they were climbing up. The figure wearing Sam's face stood motionless, watching the pit with an unnatural stillness. That terrible, mocking smile still twisted his lips. Then, in that same hollow voice, he spoke again. "You should have left." I took a step back. My whole body was screaming at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The tunnel behind me was too narrow, too winding. I'd never reach the surface in time. And the humming. It was inside my head now. The first thing pulled itself over the edge. At first, it looked like a person or something that had once been one. Its body was wrong. The limbs were too long, bending in ways that defied human anatomy. Its skin was stretched, pale and translucent, like something that had never seen the sun. The eyes, if they were eyes at all, were just hollow indents, black and empty. And it was humming, not with its mouth, with its entire body. The sound vibrated from its skin, a sickening resonance that I could feel more than hear. And it wasn't alone. Another one crawled over the edge, followed by another, and another. A wave of them was rising from the darkness below, their bodies moving in sync, like they were all part of the same terrible thing. And they were looking at me. My breathing hitched, my chest tightening. I couldn't blink, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The thing that wore Sam's face took a slow step forward. "You hear it, don't you?" he whispered. The creatures were moving toward me now, their footsteps silent. Not even a scrape of sound against the stone. They moved like they were gliding. I took a desperate step back, too fast. My boots slipped on the slick cave floor, and I went down hard, my flashlight skidding away into the dark. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The creatures were almost on me now. I scrambled backward, my hands scraping against rock, feeling something wet. The humming was everywhere. Inside my skull, in my bones. It was changing me. Then something grabbed my wrist. I screamed, but it wasn't one of them. It was a hand, a human one. And when I turned my head, my stomach dropped into the abyss of the pit. Sam, the real Sam, pale, emaciated, filthy, but alive. His fingers dug into my wrist, his face twisted in a look of pure terror. You have to run. I couldn't process it. I had seen him standing there. I had heard his voice. But now there were two Sams, one clinging to my wrist, his nails biting into my skin, and the other standing above me, still smiling, still waiting. My mind fractured. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The creatures were so close now. The Sam holding my wrist was trembling, his voice a desperate whisper. They're not real. Don't listen to them. You have to run. The other Sam took another step forward. He tilted his head too far, the skin of his neck creasing unnaturally. Then he spoke again. He's not real. The world broke around me. The humming swelled, shaking the cavern. The walls shuddered, rock dust raining down. And suddenly, the creatures lunged. Sam yanked me to my feet, dragging me toward a narrow opening in the cavern wall, one I hadn't seen before. We barely made it through before I heard them slam against the rock behind us. Clawing, reaching. The tunnel was too tight for them to follow. For now, I collapsed, gasping for breath, my entire body shaking uncontrollably. Sam was on his hands and knees, panting. His eyes were wild, sunken. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, I forced out a single broken whisper. What the fuck is happening? Sam swallowed hard. His voice was barely audible. I went too deep. He turned his head toward me, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. And what I saw made my blood run cold, because my brother, the real one, was terrified of me. And then he said something that shattered everything. How long have you been hearing it? Sam's question lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. How long have you been hearing it? The weight of his words settled over me, heavy and suffocating. I stared at him, my breath hitching. I didn't know how to answer. I had only heard the humming after coming down here, right? But as I sat there, heart pounding, trying to replay the past in my mind, a cold realization began gnawing at me. Had it really started in the cave? Or had it been with me long before I ever stepped inside? The tunnel was tight and suffocating, the stone walls pressing in from both sides. The things we had barely escaped, the hollow ones, were still behind us, their inhuman hands clawing at the rock. The humming still vibrated in the air, but it was weaker here, muffled. I could breathe again, but only just. Sam was staring at me like he was waiting for an answer. I swallowed hard. I don't know. His face twisted, a mixture of exhaustion and something close to fear. I started hearing it before I got lost, he whispered. Weeks before. I didn't say anything, because I realized something then, something that made my stomach twist into knots. I had been humming. For days. Maybe longer. I hadn't even noticed. It was always just under my breath, a meaningless sound, something I assumed was just a habit. But what if it wasn't? What if it had been something inside me all along? I shivered and wiped the sweat from my forehead. The deeper we had gone, the colder it had gotten, but now I was burning up. Sam looked just as bad. His skin was pale, slick with sweat, his body too thin. He had been down here for days, but there was something else, something in his eyes. A kind of hollowness, like something had been eating away at him from the inside. "We have to keep moving," he muttered, running a hand through his tangled hair. "There's another way out. I found it before, but his voice faltered. I couldn't make it alone. I hesitated. The tunnel ahead was narrow and dark, sloping deeper into the unknown. But behind us, the hollow ones were still there, waiting. I could feel them. Something was keeping them from entering this passage, but I knew it wouldn't last. We had no choice. So we went deeper. We walked for what felt like hours, maybe longer. Time didn't make sense down here. The light from my flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and every so often the walls seemed to shift, like they weren't made of rock at all, but something else. Something alive, and the humming never really stopped. It was faint now, but I could still feel it inside me, like an echo buried in my skull. I try not to think about it. Instead, I focused on Sam, on getting him out of here. But as we moved, I noticed something. His footsteps weren't in sync with mine. I stopped. So did he. Too quickly, like he was copying me. My stomach twisted. "Sam." My voice came out weak. He turned to look at me, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if he was real. The walls of the tunnel seemed closer now, pressing in on us. And Sam, his face was too pale. His eyes were too dark. Something in my gut told me to run, but I didn't. Because if Sam wasn't real, then that meant I wasn't alone down here. The light flickered. A rush of cold air swept through the passage, and suddenly I knew something else was here with us. And it was waiting for me to realize it. Sam's voice cut through the silence. "Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't turn around." I didn't move. I couldn't. My body had locked up, every muscle tense, my skin crawling with the feeling of eyes on me. I wanted to look. I needed to, but I didn't. Sam grabbed my wrist. His grip was too cold. "Move." His voice was strained, his breath ragged. "If you turn around, the humming changed. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was a whisper, and it was saying my name. I ran. I don't even remember making the decision. I just ran. The tunnel was twisting, endless, suffocating, and the deeper I went, the more the world felt like it was falling apart around me. The walls weren't rock anymore. They were breathing. Something was alive down here, and I was inside of it. Sam was ahead of me now, his movements frantic. "We're close, I swear we're close." But I could feel it. Something was coming after us. Something that wasn't running, wasn't chasing, just waiting. Waiting for me to listen. And I almost did. For a fraction of a second, I almost turned around. But then light. A faint glow just ahead. The exit. I could see it. I could see it. We burst through the tunnel, into a narrow fissure in the rock. The cold night air hit me like a shockwave, and suddenly silence. The humming was gone. I collapsed onto the ground, gasping. Sam was beside me, his face ashen, his body trembling. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, slowly, he looked at me. His eyes were hollow, and he whispered, "We shouldn't have left." I didn't understand at first, but now I do, because the humming never really stopped. It's still there, just beneath the surface. I hear it when I wake up. I hear it when I try to sleep. And sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps in my house. Not mine. Not Sam's. Something else. And I know it's waiting for me to come back. Because once you've heard it, you never really leave. You just bring it with you.